Marcus Holloway sat perfectly still in the conference room on the 45th floor of Ashford Tower, his hands resting on his thighs because touching anything right now would leave marks. The work jacket he wore had seen better days. Faded blue canvas with oil stains near the cuffs, the kind that never came out no matter how many times you ran it through the wash. His boots were clean at least. He'd scrubbed them in the parking garage before coming up, standing over a storm drain with a wire brush for 10 minutes because showing up to your own divorce covered in motor oil felt like admitting something he wasn't ready to admit. Across from him, Vanessa Sterling looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine spread. The Chanel suit was winter white, tailored so precisely it might as well have been painted on. Her hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail that probably cost more to maintain than most people's car payments. The Cartier watch on her wrist caught the light from the floor-to-ceiling windows. 45th floor panoramic view of Manhattan turning gray under June rain. She checked the time like she had somewhere more important to be. She probably did. Blake Morrison leaned against the windowsill, scrolling through his phone with the casual arrogance of a man who'd never been told no. 35 years old and already acting like he owned the city. The Brioni suit was midnight blue, the kind that cost 5 figures and came with a personal tailor who knew your inseam by heart. His watch was a Patek Philippe. Marcus recognized it because he'd seen Vanessa researching them online 3 months ago, back when she was still pretending the marriage meant something. 2003 F-150, right? Blake didn't look up from his screen. My driver wouldn't be caught dead in that thing. You should upgrade. Get something from this decade. Marcus said nothing. He'd learned over the past 6 months that silence made people uncomfortable, made them fill the space with more words than they intended. And right now, every word out of Blake's mouth was another nail in a coffin Marcus had spent 3 years building. The lawyer Gables, a sweating man in a gray suit that bunched at the shoulders, cleared his throat. Mr. Holloway, if you could just sign on the lines I've marked. Mrs. Sterling has been very generous with the settlement terms, considering the prenuptial agreement. Generous. The word hung in the air like smoke. Marcus kept his eyes on the papers, scanning the dense legal text he'd already memorized. Community property, none. Alimony waived. Division of assets. She keeps the penthouse on the Upper East Side. The savings account with $43,000 she'd built from her fashion company. The furniture they'd picked out together when they still shared a bed. He gets his tools, his pickup truck, and $8,000 in what the document called goodwill settlement funds. Goodwill, like she was doing him a favor. You know what I love about this? Vanessa leaned back in her chair, crossing her legs. How easy you're making it. I expected tears, maybe some begging. But this is almost disappointing. Marcus, where's the fight? He met her eyes for the first time since sitting down. They were the same green he'd fallen in love with 4 years ago, standing in his auto shop in Brooklyn while she waited for her Mercedes to get towed. But there was something different now, something harder. Like looking at a stranger wearing a familiar face. There's nothing to fight for. The words came out quiet, flat, not angry, just true. She blinked. For half a second something flickered across her face, surprise maybe, or the ghost of guilt, but it vanished before Marcus could name it. Well then, she gestured at the papers. Sign. We both have places to be. In the back corner of the conference room, almost invisible in the shadows, a woman sat watching. She hadn't said a word since the meeting started. Catherine Holloway was 68 years old and looked like old money. The kind that didn't need to announce itself. Her suit was charcoal gray, perfectly tailored but understated. No visible labels. The only jewelry she wore was a simple wedding band, 24-karat gold worn thin from 40 years of marriage to a man who died 5 years ago. Her silver hair was cut in a neat bob. Her hands rested on the top of a walking cane, polished mahogany with a brass handle. More accessory than necessity. Gables had gone pale when she walked in. Actually pale, like someone had drained the blood from his face with a syringe. He'd started to say something, then stopped, then started again before finally just gesturing to a chair in the corner and going back to his papers with shaking hands. Marcus caught his mother's eye. She gave the smallest nod. Wait. He looked back at the divorce decree, page after page of legalese that boiled down to one simple truth. Vanessa Sterling was erasing him from her life like a typo. 3 years of marriage gone. He should have felt something. Rage, heartbreak, the crushing weight of failure. Instead, there was just this cold clarity, like standing outside in winter and realizing you couldn't feel your fingers anymore. The thing was, he'd seen this coming. Not the divorce specifically, though that had been brewing for months, but the moment when Vanessa would look at him and decide he wasn't enough. That moment had been inevitable from the start, written into the foundation of everything they'd built together. He just hadn't wanted to believe it. 4 years ago, Marcus Holloway had been nobody. At least that's what everyone assumed when they looked at him. 32 years old, running a small auto repair shop in Red Hook that specialized in foreign imports. Grease under his fingernails, oil stains on his jeans, the kind of guy you'd walk past on the street without a second glance. He was good at what he did, better than good. He could diagnose an engine problem by sound, could rebuild a transmission blindfolded, knew the electrical system of a BMW like some people knew the Bible. But he wasn't supposed to be more than that. Vanessa's Mercedes had broken down 3 blocks from his shop on a Tuesday afternoon in September. Fuel pump failure, simple fix. She'd been furious, standing there in a business suit and heels that weren't designed for Brooklyn sidewalks, talking on her phone about a meeting she was missing while the tow truck driver hooked up her car. Marcus had given her coffee, not the good kind, just whatever was left in the pot from that morning, bitter and burned. She'd taken it anyway, wrapping both hands around the paper cup like she was trying to warm herself even though it was 70 degrees outside. How long? He'd looked up from the work order. Fuel pump's an easy job, 2 hours, maybe 3. I can have it ready by 6. She'd checked her watch, the same Cartier she was wearing now, though it was gold back then instead of rose gold. I have a presentation at 4. This is a disaster. Where do you need to be? Midtown, but without a car. I'll drive you. The offer had come out before he'd thought about it. She'd stared at him like he'd just offered to carry her across a river. In what? He'd pointed at the F-150 parked outside, the same truck Blake had just mocked. It was old even then. Paint faded, a dent in the passenger door from where he'd backed into a pole 5 years prior. But the engine was solid, rebuilt with his own hands, and it ran like a dream. I know it's not much, but it beats a taxi in traffic. She'd hesitated. He could see the calculation happening behind her eyes. Trusting a stranger, getting into a beat-up truck, showing up to a fashion industry meeting smelling like motor oil. But desperation was a powerful thing. Okay. Yes, thank you. The drive had been quiet at first. Radio off, windows cracked, the sound of traffic grinding through the city like gears that needed oil. Marcus kept his eyes on the road. Vanessa kept checking her phone, typing rapid-fire texts with her thumbs, occasionally glancing at him when she thought he wasn't looking. Finally. You always this helpful to strangers? Only the ones who look like they're about to murder their phone. She'd laughed. Actual laughter, not the cold version she'd perfected over the past year. That obvious, huh? I'm launching a new line, spring collection. The investors want to see prototypes, but the samples got delayed in shipping, and my presentation is basically me begging them to trust my vision with nothing to show for it. She'd leaned her head back against the seat. I'm going to bomb. You won't bomb. You don't know that. I know you got in a truck with a stranger because you were determined not to miss this meeting. That's not the kind of person who bombs presentations. She'd looked at him then. Really looked. Not at his clothes or his hands or the truck, but at him. "What's your name?" "Marcus. Marcus Holloway. Vanessa Sterling." He dropped her off in front of a glass tower in Midtown, the kind of building where the doorman wore uniforms that cost more than his monthly rent. She'd thanked him, asked for his shop's address, promised to pick up her car before closing. He'd assumed that would be the end of it. She came back at 7:30. The car was ready, purring like new. He'd replaced the fuel pump and thrown in an oil change for free because the dipstick had shown she was running a quart low. And that was the kind of thing that kept him up at night. "How'd it go?" She'd grinned, not smiled, grinned wild and bright. "I got the funding. 2 million. They loved it. That's incredible. It's because of you." She'd grabbed his hand, impulsive, not caring about the grease. "If you hadn't driven me, I would have missed it entirely. You saved my entire company. I just gave you a ride. You did more than that." She'd hesitated, still holding his hand. "Let me buy you dinner, as a thank you." He should have said no, should have seen the difference between their worlds and recognized the gap for what it was, unbridgeable. But her hand was warm in his, and she was looking at him like he'd done something heroic instead of just being decent. And he'd been lonely for a long time without realizing it. "Okay." Dinner turned into drinks. Drinks turned into a walk through Prospect Park, talking until 2 in the morning about everything and nothing. She told him about growing up in Cleveland, Ohio, in a neighborhood where the houses had bars on the windows and the corner store got robbed twice a month. About working 3 jobs to put herself through community college, then design school, then the brutal years of unpaid internships and sleeping on friends' couches while she built her portfolio. He told her about his father, about working at IBM for 30 years, starting in the mailroom and ending as a senior engineer, about how William Holloway had wanted Marcus to follow him into tech, get a degree, work in an air-conditioned office where your hands stayed clean. About the fight they'd had when Marcus dropped out of college to become a mechanic. He thought I was wasting my potential. "Were you?" Marcus had shrugged. "I'm happy. That counts for something." She'd looked at him like that was the strangest thing she'd ever heard. "You're happy fixing other people's cars? I'm happy building things. Doesn't matter if it's an engine or a program or a life. Long as I'm making something that works." 3 months later, they were living together. 6 months after that, he proposed. It wasn't romantic. No fancy restaurant, no ring hidden in champagne. Just the 2 of them in his tiny apartment above the shop, eating Chinese takeout straight from the containers, and Marcus realizing he didn't want to imagine his life without her in it. "Marry me." She'd frozen, lo mein halfway to her mouth. "What? I know it's fast. I know we're different. But I don't care about that. I care about you. I love you. Marry me." She'd put down the container. For a long moment she just stared at him, and Marcus felt his heart trying to climb out through his throat. Then she'd started crying. Not sad tears, happy ones, and nodded so hard her ponytail came loose. Yes. God, yes. They got married at City Hall on a Tuesday afternoon. No guests, no reception, just a judge and 2 witnesses pulled from the hallway. Vanessa wore a white sundress she'd designed herself. Marcus wore the only suit he owned, bought from a thrift store in college and altered to fit. They signed the license, kissed in front of a bored clerk, and went to a diner to celebrate with pancakes and terrible coffee. It was perfect for about 6 months. The cracks started small. Vanessa's company grew faster than anyone expected. The spring line sold out in 3 weeks. Investors came calling, wanting to pump money into expansion, new locations, international distribution. Suddenly she was flying to Milan and Paris and London, gone for weeks at a time, coming home exhausted and distant. Marcus kept the shop running, fixed cars, paid bills. Tried not to notice how she flinched when he touched her with oil-stained hands. Tried not to hear the way she lowered her voice when her fashion industry friends called and asked what her husband did for a living. Year 2, things got worse. Vanessa started talking about moving to Manhattan. The Brooklyn apartment was too small, too far from the action, too embarrassing when her colleagues wanted to visit. Marcus sold his shop, not because he wanted to, but because she asked him to, and he was still trying to make things work. Took the money and rented a workspace in Queens, went freelance, told himself it was temporary. It wasn't. She started traveling with an assistant, then an assistant and a publicist, then an assistant, a publicist, and Blake Morrison, who ran a venture capital fund that specialized in fashion startups. Blake was everything Marcus wasn't. Ivy League educated, old money, the kind of connections that opened doors before you even knocked. He talked about cap tables and runway and exit strategies like other people talked about the weather. Vanessa started quoting him at dinner, started laughing at his jokes even when they weren't funny, started working late at the office, then later, then not coming home at all some nights. Marcus knew. Of course he knew. You didn't live with someone for 2 years and miss the signs. The way she angled her phone away when texting. The new perfume that smelled expensive and foreign. The silk underwear that showed up in the laundry, tags still on, nothing he'd seen her wear. He confronted her on a Sunday morning in March. She'd just gotten home from a business trip to Miami, still wearing yesterday's makeup. Her suitcase unpacked in the hallway. "Are you sleeping with him?" She'd frozen, her hand on the refrigerator door. For a second he thought she might lie. Then her shoulders slumped and she closed the door without taking anything out. Yes. The word hit like a fist. Not because it was a surprise, but because hearing it out loud made it real in a way it hadn't been before. How long? Does it matter? How long, Vanessa? She turned to face him. No tears, no apologies, just this flat, tired look that said she'd already checked out of the marriage and was just waiting for him to catch up. 4 months. 4 months. While she was kissing him goodbye at the airport, while she was asking him to fix things around the apartment, while she was still signing Christmas cards from the Holloways. I want a divorce. She'd nodded like she'd been expecting it. Okay, that's it? Just okay? What do you want me to say, Marcus? Her voice cracked, first real emotion he'd seen that morning. That I'm sorry? I am. I'm sorry I married you thinking I could make it work. I'm sorry I let it go on this long when we both knew it was over. I didn't know it was over. That's because you're content with mediocrity. The words came out sharp, cutting. You're happy fixing cars and living small and never wanting more. And that's fine for you, but I can't do it anymore. I can't be the wife of a mechanic who smells like motor oil and doesn't understand why I need more than this. There it was. The truth she'd been dancing around for 2 years. He wasn't enough. Would never be enough because she was measuring him by money and status and all the things he'd deliberately chosen not to chase. So that's it. You're leaving me for Blake. I'm leaving you for me. Blake just happens to be there. 3 months later, here they were. Conference room on the 45th floor, signing papers that would erase their marriage like it had never happened. Marcus should have fought harder, should have told her the truth about who he really was, what he'd really been doing all those late nights in the garage. But pride was a stubborn thing, and he was tired of being seen as less than. Let her think she won. Let her walk away with her $8,000 consolation prize and her venture capitalist boyfriend and her fashion empire built on credit cards and borrowed time. He picked up the pen, cheap plastic ballpoint, the kind that came free with office supply orders, and flipped to the signature pages. Wait, Blake pushed off from the windowsill. Before you sign, there's something you should know. Marcus looked up. Vanessa shot Blake a warning glance that he ignored. Vanessa and I are getting engaged, officially. We're announcing it at the Metropolitan Club next month. Blake's smile was sharp as broken glass. Just figured you should hear it from us instead of reading it in the society pages. Professional courtesy and all that. Professional courtesy from the man who'd been sleeping with his wife for 4 months while pretending to be a business partner. Marcus felt his mother shift in the corner, heard the quiet tap of her cane against the floor, a warning. Don't react. Stay calm. Don't. He looked at Vanessa. She had the decency to look uncomfortable at least. Congratulations. Blake's smile faltered. That's it? No scene? No begging her to reconsider? Would it change anything? The question hung in the air. Vanessa looked away, finding something fascinating in the rain-streaked windows. No, Blake said finally. It wouldn't. Then there's nothing to say. Marcus turned back to the papers. His hand was steady as he signed his name on the first line. Marcus Holloway. Not Marcus Carter Holloway Ashford, which was his legal name, the one on his birth certificate and driver's license and the corporate filings for Carter Technologies. Just Marcus Holloway, the mechanic, the nobody, the man who wasn't worth fighting for. He signed the second page, third, fourth. Each signature felt like letting go of something he'd been holding too tight for too long. Not the marriage. That had been dead for months, but the hope that maybe if he waited long enough, stayed quiet enough, loved her hard enough, she'd wake up one day and see him for who he really was. She wouldn't. She'd proven that. Final page. He signed his name one last time and pushed the papers back across the table. Done. Gables grabbed them like they might catch fire, flipping through to verify every signature was in place. This is, yes, everything appears to be in order. I'll file these with the court tomorrow. You should receive your final decree within 30 days. 30 days until it was official. 30 days until Vanessa Sterling was no longer his wife, no longer his problem, no longer anything to him except a name he'd have to learn not to think about in the middle of the night. She stood up, smoothing her skirt. I hope you find someone who makes you happy, Marcus. Someone who fits your lifestyle. I hope Blake gives you everything you think you need. It wasn't quite a blessing, wasn't quite a curse, something in between like most truths. Blake grabbed his jacket from the back of his chair. Come on, babe. I made reservations at Per Se, 1 o'clock. Actually, the voice came from the corner, quiet but carrying. Before you leave, there's something we need to discuss. Catherine Holloway stood up, leaning on her cane with one hand. She was shorter than Marcus remembered, barely 5'4" in heels, but she had a presence that made the room feel smaller just by standing. Gables actually took a step back, bumping into his chair. Vanessa frowned. I'm sorry. Who are you? An observer. Catherine walked slowly to the table, her cane tapping against the floor with each step. Tap, step, tap, step. I was told there was a legal proceeding happening in my building. I like to keep informed about who uses my conference rooms. Your building? Blake's laugh was nervous, forced. This is Ashford Tower. Unless you're... He stopped, actually stopped mid-sentence as the pieces fell into place. The silver hair, the cane, the way Gables had gone white as printer paper when she walked in. Catherine Holloway. She didn't offer her hand. I own this building, among other things. Vanessa found her voice first. Mrs. Holloway, I had no idea. We would never have presumed. It's fine. The conference room is available for rent, though I do wonder about the company Mr. Gables keeps these days. She looked at the lawyer with something that might have been disappointment. We've known each other 15 years, Harold. You could have sent a courtesy call. I didn't think, Mrs. Holloway. I apologize. Don't apologize. Just introduce me to your clients. Gables looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. This is Vanessa Sterling and Blake Morrison. There was a divorce proceeding. I gathered that much. Catherine's eyes moved to Marcus. They were ice blue, sharp as January wind, and for half a second something passed between them that looked almost like amusement. And the gentleman in the work jacket? Marcus stood up. his boots scuffing against the polished floor, leaving faint marks he knew the cleaning crew would buff out by morning. "Marcus Holloway, ma'am." "Holloway." She said it slowly, tasting the name. "That's interesting. I used to know a Holloway, good man. Worked for my late husband back in the 80s. Started in the mailroom, ended up running our entire IT division. That was my father." The room went very quiet. Even the rain outside seemed to pause, waiting. "William Holloway." Catherine smiled, and it was warm, genuine, nothing like the corporate mask most billionaires wore. "I went to his funeral 5 years ago." "Lovely service. You gave the eulogy. You remember that?" "I remember my husband cried. First time I'd seen him cry since our daughter died. Your father was a good friend to him." Vanessa was staring at Marcus like she'd never seen him before. Blake had gone pale, hand frozen halfway to his phone. "I didn't know." Vanessa's voice came out small. "You never said your father worked for—" "You never asked." The words landed like stones in still water. She flinched. Catherine tapped her cane against the floor. "Mr. Morrison, I understand you have a meeting scheduled with Ashford Holdings next Monday. Is that correct?" Blake straightened, trying to recover his composure. "Yes, ma'am. We're very excited about the opportunity to—" "Canceled. I'm sorry? The meeting. It's canceled. My acquisitions team did their due diligence on your fund. The numbers don't work. Too much leverage, not enough actual assets." "We're not interested." Blake's face went from pale to red. "That's not— We have investors, we have—" "You have debt, $30 million worth according to our research. Some of it ours, actually. We bought your notes from a distressed asset fund last month." Catherine tilted her head. "Small world. We'll be calling those notes in Monday morning. Have your lawyer ready." The silence that followed was the kind that made your ears ring. Blake opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again like a fish drowning in air. Vanessa grabbed his arm. "Blake, what is she talking about? What debt?" He shook her off. "This is insane. You can't just— There are contracts, there are clauses. Read the fine print, Mr. Morrison. We have the right to call in any loan if we determine the borrower poses an unacceptable risk." Catherine's smile was cold as winter steel. "You pose an unacceptable risk. This is because of him, isn't it?" Blake pointed at Marcus. "Because his daddy worked for your husband. This is nepotism. This is business." Catherine's voice dropped 10 degrees. "And if you're going to throw around accusations, you should make sure you're not standing in a room that records everything for liability purposes." Blake's eyes went to the ceiling, searching for cameras. Found them. 2 small domes in opposite corners, red lights blinking. "I think we're done here." Catherine turned to Marcus. "Walk an old woman to her car." It wasn't really a question. Marcus grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair, ignoring Vanessa's stare, ignoring Blake's barely contained rage. He followed his mother to the door. Behind them, Vanessa found her voice. "Marcus, wait." He stopped, didn't turn around. "That 8,000, you should take it. You'll need it." He left it on the table, walked out without looking back. The elevator ride down was silent except for the mechanical hum of cables and pulleys. Catherine watched the floor numbers tick down, 45, 44, 43, while Marcus stood with his hands in his pockets trying to process what had just happened. The fluorescent lights made everything feel overexposed, clinical, like a hospital corridor instead of a luxury office building. "You didn't have to do that." "Do what? Cancel Blake's meeting? Call in his loans? You just cost him his entire business." "I cost him nothing." Catherine's reflection in the polished doors was calm, measured. He cost himself by leveraging other people's money to fund a lifestyle he couldn't afford. "Besides, you think I'd let that smug little trust fund baby walk away thinking he won after what he did to my son?" "I'm fine. You're heartbroken. There's a difference." The elevator opened into the parking garage. A black Escalade was waiting, engine running, driver standing at attention. Catherine's daily car, armored and anonymous, the kind that blended into Manhattan traffic like water. She paused before getting in, one hand on the doorframe, looking at him with those ice-blue eyes that missed nothing. "Are you sure about this? Once we start, there's no going back." Marcus thought about Vanessa's face when Catherine introduced herself, the way Blake's confidence had crumbled like wet paper, the $8,000 still sitting on the conference room table, unclaimed. I wanted her to love me for who I was, not what I had. And she didn't. Then she doesn't deserve to know the truth. Catherine patted his arm, the gesture brief but warm. 3 weeks until their engagement party. That gives us time to prepare. Prepare what? Justice, baby, the kind that comes with receipts. She got into the car, the door closed with a heavy thunk, bulletproof glass and reinforced steel between her and the world. Marcus watched the Escalade pull out of the garage, merge into traffic, disappear into the gray maze of the city. Behind him, footsteps echoed across concrete. He didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Marcus. Vanessa's heels clicked against the floor. She'd followed him down, leaving Blake upstairs with Gables and the divorce papers and his crumbling empire. Her makeup was starting to run from tears she was trying not to cry. He turned. She looked smaller somehow, standing there in her designer suit with mascara beginning to smudge, like a woman realizing too late that she'd miscalculated everything. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Tell you what? That your father was... that you knew..." She gestured helplessly at the building around them. "Any of it? Why did you let me think you were just a mechanic?" "I am just a mechanic. Don't do that. Don't lie. I'm not lying." Marcus kept his voice level, calm. "My father worked for Ashford Holdings. That doesn't make me special. That just makes me the son of a man who was good at his job. But Catherine Holloway knows you. She came to your father's funeral. She just destroyed Blake's entire fund because of you. She destroyed his fund because he's a fraud. That has nothing to do with me." Vanessa wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly looking cold despite the heated garage. "I made a mistake." "Yes, you did. Not the divorce, I mean..." She took a shaky breath. "I mean treating you like you weren't enough, making you feel small. You were never small, Marcus. I just couldn't see past my own insecurities." For a second he wanted to tell her everything. About Carter Technologies, about the software he'd built in the garage while she slept, the patents filed under shell companies, the IPO that would make him richer than she'd ever be. About the man she'd thrown away for Blake Morrison, who was worth nothing compared to what she could have had. But telling her wouldn't change anything. It would just be petty, and he was tired of being petty. "I hope Blake makes you happy. He won't." She said it flat, matter of fact. "I know that now. He's broke, probably worse than broke. And now that Catherine Holloway is calling in his debts..." Her laugh was bitter. "I'm going to end up exactly where I started, alone and scrambling." "You'll survive. You always do." "Will I?" Marcus looked at her, really looked, saw the fear underneath the designer clothes, the desperation that had driven her to trade a marriage for a venture capitalist's promises. She'd been running from poverty so long she'd forgotten how to stand still. "Yeah, you will." He walked past her, heading for the exit where his F-150 was parked in visitor parking. She didn't follow, just stood there under the fluorescent lights with her arms wrapped tight, watching him leave for the second time that day. Outside, the rain had stopped. The city smelled like wet asphalt and exhaust fumes, the particular perfume of June in Manhattan. Marcus climbed into his truck, familiar cracked leather, familiar engine rattle, familiar everything, and sat for a minute with his hands on the wheel. His phone buzzed, text from his mother. "Dinner tonight. We should discuss Metropolitan Club arrangements." He typed back, 7? Perfect. Wear something nice, we're celebrating." celebrating like they'd won something. Maybe they had. Maybe this was what winning looked like when you played the long game, watching your ex-wife realize too late what she'd thrown away, watching her new boyfriend's empire crumble, walking out with your dignity intact and your secrets still buried. Or maybe it was just the start. Marcus started the engine. It caught on the first try, purring smooth, all that rebuild work paying off. He pulled out of the parking garage into Manhattan traffic, just another pickup truck in a city full of them, invisible and unremarkable, exactly how he liked it, for now. The drive to Precision Auto Restoration took 40 minutes through midday gridlock. Marcus had bought the Long Island City warehouse 2 years ago, back when Vanessa was still pretending to care about his work. The building sat on a quiet industrial block, high ceilings with exposed brick, floor-to-ceiling windows that let in winter light the color of steel. Not the kind of shop that fixed oil changes and brake pads. This was where Manhattan's elite brought their vintage Ferraris and Porsches and Aston Martins to be resurrected from rust and neglect. The waiting list was 8 months long. The hourly rate made lawyers jealous. Marcus employed 6 mechanics, all of them older than him, all of them convinced they worked for some mysterious owner who only showed up for quarterly inspections. The business card said Precision Auto Restoration, a division of Carter Holdings. Nobody bothered asking what Carter Holdings was. The paychecks cleared. The work was challenging. That was enough. What they didn't know, Marcus Holloway was Carter Holdings, had been since he incorporated 4 years ago, 2 years before he met Vanessa, back when he was still running the Brooklyn shop and coding software in a studio apartment that smelled like burnt coffee and possibility. Tommy, the senior mechanic, was bleeding the brakes on a vintage Porsche 911 when Marcus walked in. 50 years old with hands like leather and 40 years of muscle memory in every movement. Heading out early? Marcus grabbed his keys from the hook by the door. Got an appointment in the city. You good? Tommy wiped sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. That guy who was here earlier, he seemed... I'm fine. Marcus pulled out his wallet, counted out $300 bills. Take the crew to Flanagan's after closing. Drinks on me. What's the occasion? Just felt like it. Tommy pocketed the cash, studied Marcus's face for a beat too long, then went back to the Porsche without another word. That was the thing about good mechanics. They knew when something was broken even if you couldn't see it yet. The drive into Midtown took another 30 minutes. Marcus parked in a garage 3 blocks from Covington and Burke's offices, paid the extortion-level hourly rate, and walked the rest of the way under a sky threatening snow even though it was June. The law firm occupied floors 30 through 35 of a glass tower. Marcus checked in with security, got a visitor badge that clipped to his jacket, rode the elevator up with 2 men in suits having an animated conversation about discovery motions and depositions. They didn't look at him. People in expensive buildings never looked at people who didn't belong. Patricia met him in the lobby on 32. She was 50, silver hair pulled into a bun, reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She'd been his father's assistant at IBM 20 years ago, had cried at the funeral, and agreed to help Marcus navigate corporate law when Carter Technologies got too big to run from a kitchen table. You're early. Traffic was light. Samuel's waiting. Fair warning. He wants to talk about the IPO timeline again. Samuel Reed was Carter Technologies' corporate counsel. Yale Law, 15 years at Goldman Sachs before going into private practice. The kind of lawyer who billed in 6-minute increments and was worth every penny. He was also William Holloway's college roommate, which meant he had a vested interest in making sure Marcus didn't accidentally tank a multi-million-dollar company through ignorance. Conference Room B was all glass walls and leather chairs and a view of the Chrysler Building turning gold in afternoon light. Reed sat at the head of the table with a stack of documents that could have killed a small animal. Marcus, good. Sit. Marcus sat. Reed slid a bound prospectus across the table. Q4 revenue projections came in. We're up 18% over Q3. Subscription renewals are at 94% retention. New client acquisition is exceeding targets by 30%. That's good. That's exceptional. Reed leaned back, tapping his pen against the table, which is why the board thinks now is the time to revisit going public. They'd had this conversation before, multiple times. Carter Technologies was profitable, growing, stable, exactly the kind of company that could launch a successful IPO and make everyone involved obscenely wealthy. But going public meant scrutiny, meant quarterly earnings calls and shareholder expectations and Marcus's name all over financial news as the boy genius who'd built a tech company in his spare time while fixing cars. I'm still not interested. You're leaving money on the table. I have enough money. Reed studied him the way lawyers study witnesses they're about to cross-examine. This isn't about the divorce, is it? Because if you're avoiding publicity to spare your ex-wife's feelings, Vanessa doesn't factor into my business decisions. Good, because her fashion company is circling the drain. Word on the street is she's underwater $8 million and sinking fast. Her investors are getting nervous. Marcus hadn't asked, didn't need to, but the information settled in his chest like a stone anyway. How'd you hear that? I hear everything. It's why you pay me. Reed flipped through the prospectus, found a page marked with a yellow tab. Here's what I'm proposing. We do a limited IPO. Offer 30% of shares publicly. Retain 70% between you and your mother. That gives you capital for expansion, keeps control firmly in family hands, and gets the board off my back about growth opportunities. When? Spring, April or May. Market conditions are favorable. We'd need to file with the SEC by February, which gives you 6 weeks to decide if you want to stay invisible forever or actually get credit for what you've built. Credit. The word tasted like ashes. Marcus had spent 3 years hiding Carter Technologies from Vanessa because he wanted to know if she'd love him without it. She hadn't. Now she was engaged to Blake Morrison, planning some society wedding at the Metropolitan Club, and Marcus was sitting in a lawyer's office debating whether to announce to the world that the grease monkey she'd divorced was actually worth $50 million. The irony was sharp enough to draw blood. I'll think about it. Think fast. These windows close. Reed stood, gathering his papers. Oh, and your mother called. Something about needing you to RSVP to a party. I'll handle it. Back in the elevator, descending through floors of people who measured success in corner offices and expense accounts, Marcus pulled out his phone. 7 missed calls, and 3 from unknown numbers, 4 from his mother. He called her back. She answered on the first ring, finally. I was about to send a search party. I was in a meeting. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. I need you to confirm you're attending the Metropolitan Club event, the engagement party. Vanessa and Blake's grand announcement scheduled for 3 weeks from Saturday. Marcus had almost forgotten about it, buried as he'd been in carburetors and quarterly projections. I don't need a guest. You need someone respectable. Someone who won't make Blake feel threatened but will make Vanessa regret every decision that led her to that moment. Catherine's voice carried that particular satisfaction of a woman who'd orchestrated something 6 moves ahead of everyone else. Diana Martinez, remember her? Designed the lobby renovation for Ashford Tower. Brilliant woman, elegant, completely uninterested in you romantically so there won't be any awkward expectations. Marcus remembered Diana. Late 40s, sharp cheekbones, dark hair with a silver streak she wore like a statement. She'd pitched the lobby redesign with a scale model built from reclaimed materials and a 20-minute presentation that had the board eating from her hand. She'd do it? I already asked. She said yes. Catherine's voice carried satisfaction. I told her to wear something stunning but understated. We want Vanessa to notice her, not overshadow your entrance. This feels manipulative. Baby, it is manipulative. That's the point. You're not going to that party to celebrate their engagement. You're going to show her exactly what she threw away. Marcus leaned against the elevator wall, watching floor numbers tick down, 32, 31, 30. What if I just don't go? Then Blake wins. He gets to marry your ex-wife, spend her money until it runs out, and never face consequences for treating you like you were beneath him. Catherine's tone shifted softer. You don't have to destroy them, Marcus, but you should at least let them see who you really are. Give them one night of truth before they build their marriage on lies. The elevator opened onto the lobby. Marcus stepped out into the marble and glass canyon, surrounded by people rushing to meetings and deals and lives that didn't include grease stains or code commits or the quiet satisfaction of fixing things. Okay, I'll go. Excellent. Wear the charcoal suit, not the navy. And for God's sake, get a haircut before then. You look like a mechanic. I am a mechanic. You're a CEO who happens to fix cars. There's a difference. She hung up before he could argue. Marcus walked back to the parking garage through streets going dark with early winter. His phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Marcus, this is Vanessa. I need to talk to you. Please call me. He deleted it, kept walking. Across town in a penthouse apartment she couldn't afford. And a life built on credit she couldn't sustain. Vanessa Sterling stared at her phone, willing it to ring. It didn't. She tried again, typing fast before she lost her nerve. It's important. About Blake. Please. The message showed as delivered, then read, then nothing. Blake emerged from the bedroom in a bathrobe that cost $1,200. Hair wet from the shower. Already on his phone, scrolling through emails that made his jaw tighten. Who are you texting? No one. Work thing. She locked her screen, set the phone face down on the marble kitchen counter that had come with the apartment. Rental furniture in a rental life. Everything temporary, everything borrowed. How was your meeting? Cancelled. He poured scotch into a crystal tumbler, neat, drank half of it in one swallow. Catherine Holloway's office called, said they're pursuing other opportunities. Vanessa's stomach dropped. The Ashford deal had been Blake's safety net, the $50 million that would have covered his debts and funded the expansion and proven to his investors that he was worth backing. Without it, they were exposed. What about the other funds? The ones in Boston? Also pulling out. Apparently word travels fast when Catherine Holloway decides you're not worth her time. He finished the scotch, poured more. We're screwed, Vanessa. Completely. I've got $20 million in margin calls coming due next month. My investors are asking questions I can't answer. And now the one woman who could have saved me has decided I'm toxic. He laughed, bitter. All because I'm marrying your mechanic's ex-wife. Marcus has nothing to do with this. Doesn't he? Catherine Holloway shows up at your divorce, destroys my business in 5 minutes, and you think that's coincidence? Wake up, Vanessa. Your ex-husband has connections you never bothered learning about. The words hit like a slap because he was right. She'd spent 3 years married to Marcus and never once asked about his family beyond the basics. Never wondered why he had refined taste in wine despite the grease-stained work clothes. Never questioned how a mechanic could afford the diamond engagement ring he'd proposed with, modest though it was. She'd been so busy looking forward, climbing higher, chasing the version of success that looked good on Instagram, that she'd never looked sideways at the man sleeping next to her. I tried calling him. Blake set down his glass with a click that sounded too loud. Then make him answer. Go to his shop. Grovel if you have to. Find out what his connection to Catherine Holloway is and whether he can undo whatever the hell he did to my business. I can't just... You can. You will. He grabbed his phone, headed back to the bedroom. I have calls to make. Damage control. And Vanessa, figure out your own damage control too. Your company's bleeding money and I'm in no position to bail you out anymore. The bedroom door closed, locked. Vanessa stood alone in the kitchen, surrounded by rental furniture and marble counters, watching the city lights blink on through floor-to-ceiling windows she couldn't afford. Her phone sat dark on the counter. No missed calls, no messages, just the silence of a man who'd said everything he needed to say 3 weeks ago in a conference room on the 45th floor. She opened her banking app, checked the balances she'd been avoiding for weeks. Business account, 43,000, personal account, 8,200, credit cards maxed, all of them. The engagement party was costing 300,000. Half already paid, non-refundable. Half due 2 weeks before the event. Money she didn't have. Money Blake had promised to cover because his fund was thriving and her company would be profitable any quarter now. And together they were building an empire. Except his fund was dying and her company was already dead, just waiting for someone to call time of death and file the paperwork. She picked up her phone, scrolled to Marcus's contact, deleted, started typing a new message to his old email address, the one from when they were married, stopped. What would she even say? Sorry I treated you like you were nothing. Sorry I chose Blake's promises over your quiet steadiness. Sorry I'm desperate enough now to beg the man I divorced for help because my brilliant plan is falling apart. She deleted the draft, set the phone down. Through the windows, Manhattan glittered like scattered diamonds. Somewhere in those lights was Marcus, living whatever life he'd built after she walked away. Maybe he was happy. Maybe he'd already moved on, found someone who appreciated grease-stained hands and patient explanations of how engines worked. Maybe he thought about her sometimes and felt nothing but relief. That possibility hurt worse than anger would have. Her phone buzzed. Text from the wedding planner, Eleanor Wright. Final payment due for Metropolitan Club venue. 150,000 Friday deadline or we lose the booking. Vanessa stared at the message until the screen went dark. In a restored brownstone in Brooklyn Heights, Catherine Holloway sat in her late husband's study, surrounded by bankers' boxes full of financial records. Her reading glasses reflected the glow from dual monitors showing spreadsheets and corporate filings and the digital skeleton of Blake Morrison's collapsing empire. Patricia from Covington and Burke had sent over the full analysis. 23 pages dense with numbers and legal citations and conclusions that all pointed to the same inevitable end. Blake Morrison had been running his fund like a Ponzi scheme, using new investor money to cover old debts, leveraging assets he didn't own to secure loans he couldn't repay. It was elegant in its stupidity, the kind of thing that worked until it didn't, and then it destroyed everyone in the blast radius. Vanessa would be in that radius. Her company owed Blake's fund $800,000 from a bridge loan 6 months ago. When his fund collapsed, and it would collapse, Catherine had made sure of that, Vanessa's company would be dragged down with it. Catherine almost felt bad. Almost. But then she remembered watching Marcus sign those divorce papers with steady hands while Vanessa checked her watch. Remembered Blake's smirk when he announced the engagement party. Remembered her son walking out of that conference room looking like someone had carved out his heart and handed it back to him in pieces. She didn't feel bad anymore. Her phone rang. Marcus, done thinking about the IPO? I'm doing it. Spring timeline. Tell Reed to file the SEC paperwork. Catherine leaned back in the leather chair that still smelled faintly of her husband's cologne even after 5 years. You sure? Once we announce, there's no hiding anymore. Every financial journalist in the country will write about you. Good, let them write. Marcus's voice carried something she hadn't heard in months. Not quite anger, but determination. Vanessa wanted me to be more ambitious. She can read about my ambition in the Wall Street Journal. That's my boy. One more thing. The Metropolitan Club engagement party. I want to make sure Blake knows I'm coming. How do you want to handle that? Send the RSVP. Marcus, Carter, Holloway, Ashford plus guest. Make sure it goes to their wedding planner so Vanessa sees it. Catherine smiled, sharp as cut glass. Consider it done. She hung up and pulled up the contact for Eleanor Wright, who ran the most exclusive event planning company in Manhattan. Eleanor had organized Catherine's husband's funeral, had coordinated charity galas for every major museum in the city, and owed Catherine enough favors to fill a book. The phone rang twice. Catherine, what can I do for you? I understand you're planning an engagement party at the Metropolitan Club. Vanessa Sterling and Blake Morrison. Brief pause. I am. I need you to add a name to the guest list. RSVP is accepted. Marcus Carter Holloway Ashford +1. Longer pause. The sound of typing. That name isn't on the approved list. It will be. Marcus is an old family friend. I'd consider it a personal favor, Eleanor. More typing. Catherine could picture her scrolling through databases, cross-referencing names, putting pieces together the way good planners did when billionaires made requests. Marcus Carter Holloway Ashford. Any relation to Ashford Holdings? My son. The typing stopped. When Eleanor spoke again, her voice carried the careful neutrality of someone who'd just realized they were standing in a minefield. Of course. I'll add him immediately. Should I inform Miss Sterling? Absolutely. Included in her next update. I'm sure she'll be delighted to know Marcus is attending. Of course. Will there be anything else? That's all. Thank you, Eleanor. Catherine ended the call and sent a text to Diana Martinez. Confirmed for Metropolitan Club 3 weeks Saturday. I'll send details. Wear something that makes architects look like artists. Diana replied immediately. This is either going to be brilliant or a disaster. Catherine typed back. Why not both? She closed the laptop and stood, joints protesting the 2 hours she'd spent immobile in the chair. The study was dark except for the desk lamp, the rest of the brownstone quiet and empty. Too quiet. She missed Robert most in moments like this, when she wanted to share the particular satisfaction of a plan coming together. But Robert was 5 years gone, and Marcus needed a mother more than she needed a husband's ghost. Catherine turned off the lamp and climbed the stairs to bed, already planning what her son would wear when he walked into that engagement party and broke Vanessa Sterling's world in half. At Precision Auto Restoration, Marcus stayed late finishing the Jaguar transmission. The work was meditative, hands moving through familiar patterns, removing the old synchros, inspecting the gear teeth for wear, replacing the worn parts with new ones that would mesh perfectly. Metal and precision and the satisfaction of making something broken whole again. His phone sat on the workbench, screen dark. No messages from Vanessa. She'd tried twice more over the following days, then stopped. Good. He had nothing to say to her that wouldn't sound like bitterness or regret, and he was done with both. Tommy had gone home hours ago. The shop was silent except for the clank of tools and the occasional groan of metal settling. Marcus liked it this way, just him and the machines, no pretending to be someone he wasn't. His phone finally buzzed. Text from his mother. RSVP confirmed. Wedding planner will notify Vanessa tomorrow. Diana's in. Suit fitting scheduled for Thursday. Marcus sat down the wrench he'd been holding, wiped his hands clean, stared at the message until the screen dimmed. This was it. The moment when he stopped hiding and started showing the world, showing Vanessa who he'd been all along. Part of him wanted to back out, maintain the comfortable invisibility he'd cultivated for 4 years. The other part, the part that had signed those divorce papers and walked away from $8,000 like it was pocket change, wanted to watch her face when she realized what she'd traded for Blake Morrison's empty promises. He typed back, "See you Thursday." Then he went back to the transmission, hands steady, heart quiet, building something that would work perfectly because that's what he did. He fixed things that were broken and made them better than before, even if the thing he was fixing this time was his own 2 days later, Vanessa sat in her office, corner suite with a view rented like everything else, staring at an email from Eleanor Wright Events. Updated guest list attached. Please review and confirm final headcount by Friday. She opened the attachment, scrolled through names she recognized. Fashion editors, investors, Blake's business partners, the society photographers who would turn their engagement into content for magazines that wouldn't exist in 5 years. Then 3/4 down, Marcus Carter, Holloway, Ashford, plus guest. RSVP accepted. Her coffee mug slipped from her hand, shattered against the desk, hot liquid everywhere, spreading across the guest list printout, turning the names into brown-stained blurs. Carter, Holloway, Ashford. Marcus Carter, Holloway, Ashford. She grabbed her phone with shaking hands, pulled up Google, typed the name with coffee-sticky fingers. The results loaded. Her vision went white at the edges. Carter Technologies announces record Q4 growth. Subscription revenue exceeds projections. Marcus Carter, Holloway, Ashford named among top tech entrepreneurs under 40. Auto software startup Carter Technologies valued at $80 million in private markets. And photos. Marcus in a suit she didn't recognize, shaking hands with the mayor. Marcus at a ribbon cutting for some tech incubator in Brooklyn. Marcus standing next to Catherine Holloway at a charity gala, both of them smiling. The caption reading, Catherine Holloway and son Marcus Carter Holloway Ashford support STEM education initiatives. Son. Her phone slipped from her hands, clattered against the desk. Marcus wasn't just connected to Catherine Holloway. Marcus was Catherine Holloway's son, the heir to Ashford Holdings, the founder of an $80 million company, and the only child of one of the richest women in New York. And she'd thrown it away for Blake Morrison, who was worth less than nothing. The intercom on Vanessa's desk buzzed, her assistant's voice tinny and uncertain. Miss Sterling, your 2 o'clock is here, the bankruptcy attorney. Vanessa looked at the coffee spreading across her desk, at the Google results still glowing on her phone, at the guest list with Marcus's name burning like a brand. Cancel it. Her voice came out raw, scraped. Cancel everything. She grabbed her coat and walked out, leaving the office behind, the coffee spreading like blood across everything she'd built and lost. The rain started as she reached the street, cold and relentless, soaking through her Burberry trench in seconds. She didn't care. Walked 6 blocks before realizing she had nowhere to go. The penthouse wasn't home. Blake's office wasn't safe. Her company headquarters felt like a morgue. She ended up in Central Park, sitting on a bench near the reservoir, watching joggers circle the water like they had purpose, like they knew where they were going. Her phone kept buzzing. Blake calling. Eleanor Wright calling. Creditors she'd been dodging for weeks. She turned it off, let the silence wrap around her like a blanket. Marcus Carter Holloway Ashford. The name kept echoing. She'd been married to him for 3 years and never known his full legal name. Never asked why he sometimes got mail addressed to Carter Holdings. Never wondered about the overnight coding sessions he said were just hobby projects. Never questioned the quarterly checks that appeared in their joint account, deposits she assumed were insurance payouts or equipment sales from the Brooklyn shop. She'd been so focused on her own climb that she'd never looked down to see what foundation she was standing on, or who was holding her up. The rain turned to drizzle, then mist. By the time Vanessa walked back to the penthouse, it was dark and her clothes were ruined and she'd made a decision. Blake was on the couch, laptop open, surrounded by papers and empty glasses. His tie was gone, shirt unbuttoned, the veneer of success cracking like old paint. We need to talk. He didn't look up. If it's about money, I don't want to hear it. It's about Marcus. That got his attention. His eyes were bloodshot, rimmed with the kind of exhaustion that came from watching everything collapse in real time. What about your mechanic ex-husband? Vanessa set her phone on the coffee table, screen facing him, the Google results still loaded. He's not a mechanic. I mean, he is, but he's also the founder of Carter Technologies, $80 million valuation. Catherine Holloway's son. Blake stared at the screen for a long moment. Then he started laughing, high and sharp, the sound of a man who'd run out of options and found the cosmic joke too perfect to ignore. Of course he is. He grabbed the nearest glass, realized it was empty, threw it across the room. It shattered against the wall. You divorced Catherine Holloway's son to marry me, a broke fraud who's about to lose everything. Vanessa flinched. We can fix this. If I talk to Marcus, explain what? That you're sorry you treated him like garbage? That you want his mommy to stop ruining my life? Blake stood, swaying slightly. You think he cares? You think Catherine Holloway destroys people's businesses over nothing? She's doing it because of how you treated him, how we treated him. No, Blake pointed at her, finger trembling. She's doing it because she can. Because people like them, the Holloways, the Ashfords, they play games with people like us. We're chess pieces, Vanessa. We always were. That's not true, isn't it? Blake grabbed his jacket from the chair. I'm going out. Don't wait up. Blake, please. The door slammed. Vanessa stood alone in the penthouse, surrounded by the wreckage of the life she'd tried to build. The shattered glass on the floor caught the city lights, throwing fractured rainbows across the walls. Her phone rang. Private number. She almost didn't answer. Hello? Miss Sterling, this is Eleanor Wright. I wanted to confirm receipt of the updated guest list. I noticed Mr. Holloway's RSVP and wanted to make sure you were aware. I saw it. Wonderful. Just to clarify, Mr. Marcus Carter Holloway Ashford is listed as Catherine Holloway's son. I wanted to ensure there were no seating conflicts or... It's fine. Are you certain? Because if there's any discomfort with... It's fine, Eleanor. Seat him wherever you want, of course. There's also the matter of the final payment. The venue requires $150,000 by Friday or... I'll have it. Vanessa hung up before Eleanor could respond. She wouldn't have it. Blake wouldn't have it. The engagement party they'd planned as their grand entrance into Manhattan society was going to be the stage for their very public humiliation. And Marcus would be there to watch it happen. Across town, Marcus sat in a booth at a Korean barbecue place in Koreatown, watching Diana Martinez grill meat with the precision of someone who'd spent 40 years making sure things were built correctly. Your mother said you needed a +1 for an engagement party. She didn't mention it was your ex-wife's engagement party. Diana flipped the bulgogi, not looking at him. Late 40s, sharp features, silver streak in her dark hair that she'd had since her 20s. She wore black jeans and a charcoal sweater that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, but looked like something you'd throw on to run errands. Is that a problem? Depends. Am I walking into a Jerry Springer episode or a calculated social maneuver? The second one. Good. Diana transferred the meat to his plate. I don't do drama, but I do enjoy watching entitled people realize they're not as clever as they thought they were. She's not entitled. Marcus pushed rice around his bowl. She came from nothing. Cleveland, poverty, the whole story. She's just terrified of going back. Fear makes people cruel. Diana met his eyes across the table. Doesn't excuse it, but it explains it. Your mother told me what happened at the divorce. The $8,000, the comments about your truck. That's not fear, that's contempt. It was both. Maybe. Diana poured more soju, but you're not doing this for revenge, are you? You're doing it because she needs to see the truth. About you, about Blake, about the choices she made. Marcus thought about Vanessa in the parking garage, mascara running, asking why he never told her, about the years he'd spent wanting her to love the man he was instead of the success he could have shown her, about the quiet satisfaction he'd felt walking out of that conference room with his dignity intact even if his heart was broken. I'm doing it because silence isn't the same as surrender. Diana raised her glass. To dignified revenge, then. The kind that doesn't require you to become the monster. They clinked glasses. The soju burned going down, clean and sharp. What does your mother expect from me at this party? Be yourself. Accomplished, confident, completely unimpressed by their bullshit. Diana smiled. Basically, remind everyone in that room that there are successful, intelligent women who don't measure their worth by the size of their partner's bank account. I can do that. I know you can. That's why I said yes. Diana leaned back. Plus, Catherine Holloway asked me as a personal favor, and I don't say no to Catherine Holloway. Nobody does. Smart woman. I'm an architect. Smart is how I stay employed. They finished dinner arguing about the Guggenheim's structural integrity and whether Gary had lost his mind with the newer museum designs. Marcus paid over Diana's protests. She let him, but only because she was already planning to get the next one. Outside, the city was alive with Friday night energy. Diana flagged a cab headed downtown. Marcus walked to the parking garage where he'd left the F-150. His phone buzzed. Text from Samuel Reed, SEC filing drafted. Need your signature by Monday to stay on spring timeline. Coffee tomorrow? Marcus replied. 9 a.m. Your office. The paperwork was real now. No more theoretical discussions about going public or staying private. By Monday, Marcus Carter Holloway Ashford would be on record with the Securities and Exchange Commission as the founder and CEO of an $80 million company preparing to offer 30% of shares to public investors. By April, his face would be in the Wall Street Journal. By summer, Vanessa would understand exactly what she'd walked away from. He drove back to Brooklyn, parked in front of the brownstone his mother had bought him 3 years ago. 4 bedrooms, original hardwood floors, a backyard garden he'd never had time to plant. Vanessa had visited exactly once, made a comment about the neighborhood being too residential, too quiet, too far from the action. He'd stopped inviting her after that. Inside, the house was dark and empty. Marcus had furnished it with pieces he'd built himself during those late nights when sleep wouldn't come. Solid wood tables, bookshelves that held engineering manuals and coding textbooks and the complete works of Baldwin and Morrison. Nothing rented, nothing temporary, everything permanent and his. He poured 2 fingers of bourbon, stood at the kitchen window looking out at the garden he'd never planted. The soil was good, the light was right. He just hadn't had the time or the energy to make something grow there. Maybe after the IPO, maybe after Metropolitan Club, maybe after he stopped measuring his life by the woman who'd left and started building toward whatever came next. His phone rang. Catherine, you met with Diana? Just finished. She's perfect. I know. That's why I chose her. Catherine's voice carried satisfaction. How are you feeling about all this? Really? Marcus took a drink, let the burn settle before answering. I spent 3 years hiding who I was because I wanted her to love me without it, and she couldn't. So now she gets to see the truth and live with what she threw away. That's not revenge, that's just consequences, that's my boy. A pause. Your father would be proud, you know. Not of the money or the company, of the fact that you're facing this with dignity instead of rage. I'm not sure Dad would approve of the theatrics. Your father once bought a billboard in Times Square to prove a point to his board of directors. He understood the value of a well-timed reveal. Marcus smiled despite himself. I don't remember that story. You were 10. He was fighting for a promotion they kept giving to less qualified candidates. The billboard said, 30 years, 3 patents, 0 respect, William Holloway. He got the promotion the next week. And the board was furious, absolutely, but they gave him what he'd earned. Catherine's voice softened. All I'm saying is, sometimes people need to see the truth in a way they can't ignore. You're not being cruel, Marcus. You're being clear. They talked for another 20 minutes about nothing important. The weather, the Knicks game, whether Catherine should fire her new chef or give him one more chance to learn her preferences. The kind of conversation they'd had 1,000 times. The comfortable rhythm of mother and son who'd learned to take care of each other after William died. After hanging up, Marcus finished his bourbon and went upstairs to the bedroom. The suit for Metropolitan Club hung in the closet wrapped in plastic from the tailor. Charcoal gray Italian wool fitted perfectly because his mother had insisted on 3 separate fittings to get it right. Next to it, a navy tie and white shirt, still crisp from the dry cleaner. He looked nothing like the man who'd sat in that conference room 3 weeks ago in an oil-stained work jacket. That was the point. Saturday morning, Marcus met Samuel Reed at a coffee shop near the law offices. Reed was already there, 2 folders on the table, double espresso half finished. These are the SEC filings. Reed pushed the thicker folder across the table. Everything we discussed, 30% public offering, 70% retained by you and Catherine. Projected raise of $70 million based on current valuation. Launch target April 15th. Marcus opened the folder, scanned the dense legal text and financial projections. His name was everywhere. Marcus Carter Holloway Ashford, founder and chief executive officer. Carter Technologies, Inc. Founded 4 years prior. Revenue growth trajectory that made venture capitalists salivate. What happens after I sign? Reed took another sip of espresso. We file Monday. SEC has 45 days to review. But with our numbers and your clean history, approval should come faster. We start the roadshow in March, meeting with institutional investors, building excitement. Media coverage ramps up. You'll need to do some interviews, probably Forbes, TechCrunch, Wall Street Journal. I told you I'm not interested in interviews. You told me that when you were trying to stay invisible. Reed leaned forward. Marcus, you're about to become a public company CEO. There's no staying invisible anymore. You can control the narrative by talking to friendly reporters on your terms, or you can let them write whatever they want based on public filings and speculation. Your choice. The second folder was thinner. Reed opened it, revealing a single sheet of paper. This is the press release. Goes out the day we file. Short, factual, boring. Carter Technologies announces intention to go public, blah, blah, blah. Founder statement about excited to enter next phase of growth. Nothing controversial, nothing personal. But people will start digging. They already are. Reed pulled out his phone, showed Marcus a screenshot. 3 TechCrunch writers have already reached out asking if we'll comment on rumors of an IPO. Someone at the SEC probably leaked it. We can't stop the story, we can only shape it. Marcus read the press release 3 times. The language was dry and corporate, nothing that revealed the years of work in that Brooklyn garage, the late nights coding while Vanessa slept, the quiet satisfaction of building something that worked. Just numbers and projections and shareholder value. Okay. He signed the bottom of the filing, his handwriting bold and clear. Let's do it. Reed countersigned as witness, gathered the papers back into the folder. This goes to the SEC Monday morning. Press release goes out simultaneously. By Monday afternoon, your name will be all over financial media. By Tuesday, the mainstream outlets will pick it up. By Friday, Vanessa Sterling will have seen it approximately 1,000 times. Marcus thought about her sitting in that office, coffee mug forgotten, staring at search results that rewrote everything she thought she knew. Part of him felt guilty for the shock she was about to experience. The rest of him remembered her laugh when she slid that $8,000 check across the table. You measured silence for weakness, he thought. That's why you lost. What? Reed was looking at him strangely. Nothing. Just thinking. Well, start thinking about what you're going to wear for those interviews. And maybe practice smiling. You look like you're heading to a funeral. I'm heading to an engagement party. Same thing, apparently. They finished their coffee talking logistics. Media training sessions Reed wanted to schedule. The investor roadshow cities. The timeline for finalizing the prospectus. All the machinery that turned a private company into a public one. a quiet success into a visible triumph. Marcus left with both folders under his arm, walked back to his truck through streets crowded with Saturday shoppers and tourists. Nobody looked at him twice. In a week, that would change. In a month, he'd need to start avoiding certain restaurants because financial reporters like to stake them out. In 6 months, he'd be recognizable to anyone who read the business section. The invisibility he'd cultivated was about to end. Not because he wanted fame, but because the truth had its own gravity and eventually it pulled everything into the light. That afternoon, he drove out to Precision Auto, found Tommy under a 1965 Mustang Fastback. Curse words echoing from beneath the chassis. What's wrong with her? Transmission linkage is seized. Previous owner tried to fix it with duct tape and prayers. Tommy slid out, grease-streaked and scowling. Gonna need 3 days minimum and parts from Ohio. Do it. Marcus grabbed a shop coat from the hook. I'll help. You got somewhere else to be? Nowhere more important than this. They worked in comfortable silence, the kind that came from years of shared language that didn't require words. Pass the 3/8. Hand me that penetrating oil. Watch your fingers. The Mustang was a mess, but it was a fixable mess, the kind where you could see the problem and know exactly how to solve it. Unlike marriages, unlike bankruptcies, unlike the complicated wreckage people made of their lives when they stopped being honest about what they wanted. Tommy finally broke the silence. You doing okay? Since the divorce? Marcus didn't look up from the linkage he was freeing. Yeah, I'm good. You don't seem good. You seem like a man waiting for something to happen. Maybe I am. What are you waiting for? Justice, Marcus thought. Understanding. For Vanessa to see what she chose when she chose Blake Morrison over 3 years of patient love. For everyone who'd ever dismissed him to realize that quiet didn't mean lesser. But what he said was, for this linkage to break free so we can go get a beer. Tommy laughed, reached for the bigger wrench. Fair enough. The linkage broke free 20 minutes later with a screech of protesting metal. They spent another hour cleaning and lubricating the components, testing the action until it moved smooth as silk. By the time they finished, it was dark outside and Marcus's shoulders ached in the good way that came from honest work. They went to Flanagan's, the bar 3 blocks from the shop where mechanics and construction workers gathered after shift. Tommy ordered his usual Guinness. Marcus got a bourbon, neat. To fixing what's broken, Tommy raised his glass. To fixing what's broken, Marcus echoed. They drank in silence, watching the Knicks game on the TV above the bar. The team was losing, had been losing all season. But the crowd at Flanagan's cheered every basket like it was the championship. Hope was a stubborn thing. Marcus's phone buzzed. Email from Samuel Reed with the subject line, "You're official, filing submitted." He opened it. The SEC confirmation number, the time-stamped receipt, the press release that would go out Monday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. Everything was in motion now, no stopping it, no taking it back. In 72 hours, the world would know who Marcus Holloway really was. In 3 weeks, he'd walk into Metropolitan Club and show Vanessa Sterling exactly what she'd traded away. The bourbon tasted like victory and regret in equal measure. Sunday, he spent at his mother's brownstone, reviewing the Metropolitan Club plan one more time. Catherine had diagrams of the room layout, seating charts with names Marcus didn't recognize, a timeline of when they'd arrive and where they'd sit and how the evening would unfold. Diana will meet you at the car. You'll arrive at 8:15, fashionably late, but not disrespectfully so. What if Vanessa tries to talk to me before the evening starts? She won't. Catherine's certainty was absolute. She's going to be managing Blake, managing the photographers, managing her own panic about how to pay for an event she can't afford. She won't have time to corner you until after you're already seated. And when she does, be kind, be clear, don't gloat. Marcus raised an eyebrow. You're telling me not to gloat? I'm telling you not to be cruel. Catherine straightened the seating chart. There's a difference between showing someone the truth and rubbing their nose in it. You're better than that. What about Blake? Blake Morrison is a drowning man. He's going to lash out. Let him. Every word out of his mouth will dig him deeper. They went over contingencies. What if Blake tried to physically confront him? What if Vanessa made a scene? What if the press showed up? Catherine had answers for everything. Plans within plans. The kind of strategic thinking that had built her empire from nothing. You've been planning this for weeks, Marcus observed. I've been planning this since I sat in that conference room and watched that entitled child mock your truck. Catherine's smile was sharp. Nobody disrespects my son, not in my building, not anywhere. Marcus felt something tight in his chest loosen. For 3 years he'd been alone in his marriage, fighting to be seen, trying to be enough. But he'd never actually been alone. Catherine had been watching, waiting, gathering information and preparing for the moment when he'd need her. Thank you, he managed. You do the same for me, without hesitation. I know. That's how I raised you. They had dinner in Catherine's dining room, the formal one she almost never used. Pot roast and potatoes, the meal William used to make on Sundays when Marcus was growing up. Catherine had learned the recipe after he died, practiced until she got it right. It never tasted quite the same, but it was close enough to feel like home. After dinner, Marcus drove back to Brooklyn through streets quiet with Sunday evening calm. Tomorrow the filing would be public. Tomorrow the phone calls would start. Tomorrow his life would split cleanly into before and after, invisible and visible, Marcus the mechanic and Marcus the CEO. He parked in front of his brownstone, sat in the truck with the engine off, looking at the house he'd bought with money Vanessa never knew he had. 4 years of double life, 4 years of hoping she'd love him enough that the money wouldn't matter. She hadn't, but at least now he knew. And knowing, however painful, was better than the endless wondering. Inside, he poured another bourbon, sat at the kitchen table with the SEC filing in front of him. His signature at the bottom, next to Samuel Reed's witness signature, legal and binding, and no more hiding. His phone buzzed, text from an unknown number. Marcus, please. I saw the articles. I know about Carter Technologies. I know about your mother. I need to talk to you before Saturday, please. Vanessa. He could picture her typing this, deleting it, retyping it, trying to find words that would make him respond, trying to find the combination that would unlock forgiveness she hadn't earned. He typed back 3 words. There's nothing left, deleted them, tried again. We said everything that needed saying, deleted that too. Finally settled on, I'll see you Saturday. Sent it before he could reconsider. Her reply came instantly. Thank you. I just want to explain. He turned off his phone before she could finish. Whatever explanation she'd constructed didn't matter. Saturday would speak louder than any words she could text from her rented penthouse with her bankrupt fiancé. Marcus finished his bourbon, climbed the stairs to bed. Tomorrow the world would change. But tonight, for a few more hours, he could still be nobody. Just a man in a brownstone in Brooklyn, sleeping in a bed he'd built with his own hands. Dreaming of engines that purred and code that compiled clean in a future that didn't include the ghost of a marriage that never should have ended but had. The alarm went off at 6. Marcus showered, dressed in dark jeans and a button-down, made coffee strong enough to strip paint. By 7, he was at Precision Auto, inventorying parts and checking the week's schedule. Tommy arrived at 7:30, surprised to find him already there. Couldn't sleep? Not really. The IPO thing? Marcus looked up from the clipboard. How did you? I got eyes, boss. And I can read. That SEC filing hit the newswires an hour ago. Tommy pulled out his phone, showed Marcus the headline. Tech entrepreneur Marcus Holloway takes Carter Technologies public. 80 million valuation, spring IPO. Marcus took the phone, scanned the article, It was short, factual, pulled entirely from the SEC filing. No speculation, no commentary, just the numbers and the timeline. You knew? Tommy's voice was careful. This whole time you owned this place and you knew you were sitting on a fortune? I knew. And you came in every day, worked on cars, got grease under your fingernails like the rest of us. Because I like it. Marcus handed the phone back. The money's good, the company's important, but this, fixing things, building things, working with my hands, this is what keeps me sane. Tommy studied him for a long moment, then he nodded. Makes sense. Man's gotta have something real, something that's his. Exactly. They worked side by side until noon when Marcus's phone started ringing. First Samuel Reed, confirming the filing was live and media requests were pouring in. Then a reporter from TechCrunch, then Bloomberg, then Forbes, then the Wall Street Journal. Marcus ignored all of them, stayed under the Mustang until his phone buzzed with a text from Catherine. You're trending on Twitter. Might want to prepare a statement. He crawled out, checked his phone. Sure enough, hashtag Marcus Holloway was trending. People speculating about where he'd come from, who he was, how he'd built an $80 million company while staying completely off the radar. One tweet had a photo of him from the charity gala with Catherine. Another had found his LinkedIn profile sparse and outdated. A third had screenshot his company bio from the Carter Technologies website. Marcus Carter Holloway Ashford founded Carter Technologies to solve problems he encountered running an auto repair shop in Brooklyn. The comments were predictably divided. Half impressed by the bootstrapped success story, half skeptical that it was real. A few trying to figure out his connection to Catherine Holloway, Ashford Holdings, the real estate empire. Nobody had found Vanessa yet. Nobody had connected the dots, but they would. By Friday, someone would dig up the marriage license, the divorce filing, the timeline that showed he'd founded Carter Technologies while married to a struggling fashion designer. Then the real story would break. Marcus put his phone away, went back to work. Let them speculate. Let them dig. The truth would come out Saturday night at Metropolitan Club, in front of 200 witnesses with Vanessa Sterling standing there in a dress she couldn't afford, realizing too late what she'd lost.